Big Ben. The breath was visible from the choir. The cold night air was almost suspending their voices in its icy hand. Ben curled further into his cardboard bed. He missed his friend Ted. Ted had been old, and the evil November cold had all but finished him off. He was found by Ben on a frosty morning, statuesque beneath the winter sun. So many people had already passed him, but had paid no mind. Maybe if someone would look down, just to take a moment and see the glass eyes staring desperately at them, they may have done something to help. Alas, that was not to be Ted's fate. He died soon after. Ben stretched and yawned. A child walked past and smiled at him, asking her mum if he could have a biscuit. He took it and gobbled it up, wagging his tail in a way that punters enjoyed. Ben and Ted had been a great team. Ben, big, brindled, and slightly bombastic, had always managed to get a few pound coins thrown his way, just by giving what Ted called the eyes. And Ted, who was a marvellous painter, drew pictures of Ben on the pavement outside the train station. It wasn't much of a life, but they always had each other for love, warmth, and protection. He stood, he shook the rain from his matted coat and trotted off down the street. The locals were used to this by now, the bear-like dog trotting past their shops. They fed him and watered him. He never went out when it was too busy, but he couldn't resist looking at the humans' effort to festivize the city. Ben loved twinkling lights, and he liked to chase them as they dashed across the pavement. He was just going past the park to his favorite sniffing spot when he heard a horrible noise. The sound was coming from an alleyway, and this person needed help. An investigation was in order. The alley was dimly lit. Rainwater reflected off the cobbles and danced in Ben's shining eyes. Halfway up the alley, lying on the ground, was a young woman, obviously hurt and sobbing as if her world had ended. Ben padded gently towards her. She squealed at the sight of him looming out of the semi-darkness. He stepped back, cocking his head to one side, moving gently forward again. The woman reached out. He sniffed her hand, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, sobbing into his fur. Ben stood patiently, remembering the times Ted would do the exact same thing at their most desperate times. He would stand as long as she needed him to. Eventually, she let him go. Ben remembered the kind sausage lady who had helped him with Ted. He gently padded to the woman and nudged her to her feet. Guiding her gently out onto the street, they walked through the park. No one would approach them when he looked like this, tail erect, ears alert, and eyes fixed on where he was going. They reached the greasy spoon. Ben barked loudly. The owner opened the door smiling, knowing his bark and presuming that he'd come for his regular order. She recoiled slightly at the wretched woman standing with the dog, but one look could tell her all she needed to know. She ushered them both in, through the cafe and into a warm back room. Unsure of where to sit as there were no cardboard boxes, Ben plumped for the big, comfortable, squashy armchair. The kindly woman and the wretched woman disappeared into a room, and Ben stayed, one eye and one ear open, to make sure everyone was safe. It was morning when Ben woke up fully. He jumped off the chair and he went to find people, and hopefully food. The two women were sitting at a window table, talking. Condensation built up on the window as the sleet came down hard outside. Faceless people with umbrellas, coats, and grimaces clamoured to finish the last of their Christmas shopping. Ben padded confidently into the room and nodded the young woman from the night before. She smiled and fussed him behind the ears. His whippy tail padded rhythmically against the lino. They were looking at him intently now, smiling and nodding. The kindly woman bustled into the kitchen to fetch a couple of sausages. Ben gulped them in one bite and went to take his leave. He heard a command. He presumed it was his name, as that what Ted always called him by, and the kind woman was on her knees, arms open, with tears streaming down her face. I think, thought Ben, I think she needs me to stay.